Today we're going to be talking about bone stress as it relates to running. So there's something called Wolff's Law that says that bones adapt to the forces that are applied to them. So what we know with running is that anywhere from 6 to 14 times our body weight of force goes through our body every time we hit the ground. So you can imagine, right, like using myself as an example, I am about 200 pounds. So 200 pounds times 2,800 pounds of force would be going through my body every time I hit the ground. So you can kind of extrapolate that over, the course of maybe like a 10-mile run or a half marathon or a full marathon. So essentially what happens with running is our body needs to be able to absorb a lot of force over and over and over again. So if we can appreciate running as a big time stressor to our bones, there's really certain circumstances that can happen here. So I hope this flowchart's not too confusing. This is kind of how my brain works. So I'll just kind of walk you through it and how I think about these things and where things can get a little bit problematic. So under an ideal circumstance, right, we're going to talk about what happens at this first orange circle here. You're given training bout, right? Say you go for a run. What essentially is happening depends on your current bone health. It depends on things like your chronic training history. It depends on what happened at this actual training event, the run that you just did. It depends on your lifestyle, so things like sleep. Are you getting enough nutrients? Is your body set up for success in terms of its ability to recover from your training? So let's assume that everything is optimal, right? You do your normal run. Say it's a long run, you run 10 miles, your body's used to that, your body's able to tolerate all that kind of load, you got good sleep, nutrition, all those things. So there's no real damage to the bone itself, or no damage beyond what you would normally expect from running, right? So what happens is your body's able to remodel, and your bones get stronger as a result. But say you have a situation where maybe you had a big spike in your running, right? So now you're talking about maybe you're normally running 30 miles in a week, and for whatever reason this week you were feeling a little like ambitious, right? You run 50 miles, right? So there's a huge jump of 20 miles in your normal training volume. So you have a situation where you might have bone damage, right? Maybe you have a situation now where like the bottom of the side of your foot starts to hurt. So you have a situation now where this remodeling is still going to happen. So it's the same type of remodeling that happens over here, except in this situation, the remodeling is happening locally. So it's happening where the bone was actually damaged. So in this instance, right, this example, we're talking about the side of your foot. You have another little turning point here where two things can happen, right? So if we go up to this area here, it just says adequate rest and recovery. So what happens when a bone is damaged is it needs the opportunity for your body to go through its normal recovery process. When it gets that time, right, it gets enough time to do that, what happens is, same thing as over here, right? You get your repair, your remodeling, and your bone, it ultimately adapts and it gets stronger. But what happens at this point if you do not get adequate rest or adequate recovery between your training sessions, right? That's when you have a situation where the damage that's happening to your bone is greater than the ability for your body to repair it. And over time, if that keeps happening, you have a situation where the amount of damage that happens continues to increase. And that's where you get what's called a bone stress injury. So bone stress injuries, they happen on a continuum. If you follow the little diagram over here, right, where the first thing that happens is called a stress reaction. Going further down, if that injury is not managed appropriately, becomes the stress fracture, and then ultimately could end up in something like a complete fracture. I'm going to erase this whiteboard here, and I'm going to write out a little bit more describing these scenarios because there are certain things that are pretty predictable, and we can use to diagnose these things clinically. So just in case you maybe see a medical professional who's not proficient in identifying these situations, and they give you a green light after something, say like an X-ray, which we know is not enough to identify if you have an actual stress reaction present. Some things that you can use to just kind of determine what your course of action should be in terms of managing such an injury.